All right, now let's move on to another hot topic here, hotter maybe even than the discussion of earnings. The White House rejecting a call for a blanket stoppage of home foreclosures, warning that such a move could harm the housing market and hinder the economic recovery. Earlier, White House spokesperson Robert Gibbs told reporters, quote, there are a series of unintended consequences to a broader moratorium, echoing something that was said earlier this week by White House advisor David Axelrod on the talk show. So is it the right thing to let delinquent borrowers keep their homes, or is it moral hazard, plain and simple? Back with us is a guy who has a few thoughts about this, Rick Santelli, along with Bruce Marks, a guy who has a few thoughts about this, of NACA, a nonprofit homeowner advocacy group, who says that foreclosure suspensions at the major banks could actually help stabilize the economy, not harm it. Mr. Marks, welcome. Good to have you with us. And Rick, good to have you back. Mr. Marks, explain your thinking there, that this could actually, that a broad moratorium beyond that which has been announced by the banks, Bank of America and GMAC Mortgage, etc., that could actually be helpful in resolving the housing mess. How?
Absolutely, because the problem is these banks are not looking at whether someone can afford the mortgages. Because remember, these are the same banks who put people in the mortgages that they never even considered whether they could afford them in the first place. And now they're continuing that same practice, and they're not looking at whether the homeowners that they're foreclosing on can actually stay in their home, make an affordable payment. Because what are the consequences? If you foreclose on those homeowners, then you have vacant properties, because these properties are not being sold. They're being held as REO properties there, and it's going to depress the housing market and destroy our communities, because no one wants vacant, abandoned properties in their neighborhood.
So you think they're just not doing
homeowners there?
That the problem goes beyond paperwork problems, which have been the things that have caused the moratoria and it goes really back to the question of suitability, and that the banks weren't doing the due diligence. Rick, how do you respond to that?
Well, where do we begin? First of all, making the assumption that the current servicer originated the mortgage is probably not very accurate. To also consider that the banks are a nonprofit organization that's supposed to decide what you can and cannot afford. That's why you're supposed to kind of read up on it. Make sure you have a lawyer you're signing. Make sure you do a little homework. And if the American public can't figure out a contract, we should spend more money on education. But there's an even bigger issue. Imagine all of these derivatives and slice and dice securities are like a field of carrots when they start out. But the problem now is they're in cans of mixed vegetables all over the world. You know, the robo-signing's the tip of the iceberg.
All right, let's get back.
Rick, but look.
I mean, Bruce.
Look. Let's be real out there. We just had what we do a Save the Dream event. We did one in Sacramento. Over 30,000 people came. They're determined to keep their homes. One in Los Angeles, over 45,000 people. The fact of the matter is that these banks are not giving the homeowners the opportunity to determine affordable payment. Why would you throw out a family out of their home, Rick, when they want to make an affordable payment? And that's better for the banks, because at least they get someone making the mortgage payment who's going to live in that property. That's what happens.
But Mr. Marks,
has to happen. Remember, these banks are the ones who created the crisis. They profited from it. Let them fix it.
Mr. Marks, on your website, there's two issues. One, on your website it says NACA allows mortgage members to purchase or refinance homes with no down payment, no closing costs, no fees, no requirement for perfect credit, and below market interest rate. There are those people out there who think that that is what created the current housing crisis. And then second, how do you respond to the latest housing statistics that indicated those mortgages that were modified, more than 50% of them still went into default?
Okay, the first question, we have a product that's no down payment, no closing costs, no fees, fixed rate. The current rate is 3.75%. And you know what? We have the best performance in the industry. Because if you provide a prime loan to who the industry considers to be a subprime borrower, they become a prime borrower. They make their payments on time. These mortgages are long-term affordability. Second part of your question, the fact of the matter is when someone goes through a NACA Save the Dream event, and we do tens of thousands of restructures, and you know what? We have the best performance in the industry. You have to do it the right way, and that's the truth. When only 10%, 90% of the homeowners, when you restructure the right way, they make their payments on time.
Rick?
We've got to go back
Rick,
at this
Rick's
industry.
chomping at
Well,
the bit to respond. Let's let Rick
you
in.
know how he's able to do that, because he should be thanking taxpayers who underwrite the conservatorship of the government-sponsored enterprises that are guaranteeing 90% of the loans he's making at that rate with no down payment. And in the end, I have no problem trying to keep people in their houses, but we should enforce the legalities, bankruptcies, foreclosure law, and if banks did something wrong, they should end up in court. The problem is, the cynical in me would say that the government kind of likes what's going on because it makes it look like it's incurable for a mass refi.
No, but Rick,
you get the last word. Just a moment. Excuse me, gentlemen. Bruce, you get the last word. I'm going to give you the last word, but as part of your closing argument, Bruce, I'd like you to address the question of tactics, and that is, who does it help when you hand out flyers bearing the image of the CEO of Chase Manhattan with his, first, I understand it, cell phone number, and second, his office number? But address
absolutely
Rick's broader question.
And really, not only that, his home address.
What's the point of that?
Because he has to be held. Because he has to be, Jamie Dimon, CEO of Chase, has to be held personally responsible for the devastation he's causing to the hundreds of thousands of homeowners and millions of homeowners. We have to hold him personally responsible, not in a violent way, but we got to go to his home and go to his offices and say, you're responsible.
He forced people to buy houses they couldn't afford? Is that what you're saying?
No, he set them up for failure. They were structured to fail. But the other thing is, don't forget, it's the government. Who's doing most of the foreclosures out there? It's Fannie Mae, FHA. The government is doing that. The taxpayers are foreclosing on ourselves. We have to have President Obama, who promised when he ran for election that he would do a moratorium on foreclosures. Well, he never did it. This is his opportunity to do what he committed to do. Give us a window of opportunity to restructure the mortgages without $1 of taxpayer money. These banks created this crisis. They got to fix it with no taxpayer money.
We have to leave it there, gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us. Obviously, a hot issue.
Wow.
Hot topic.
To say the least.